Welcome to the Self-Storage Show, where I have conversations with my industry friends, talk with owners and vendors, and share tales about my management company, 3 Mile Storage. Let's go. Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning into the Self-Storage Show. Hey, right at the top, I want to talk about something that's really valuable. You don't want to miss out on it. It's 3 Mile Domination. What this is they optimize your Google business profiles, okay? And we all know for self-storage, we live and die by our rentals. I guarantee you, if you don't have your profile optimized, you're losing out on rentals every single day. So go to 3miledomination.com. Right now, they are doing free audits of your profile. You'll see the big red button right there. Book your free audit right now. Book a time. We'll go through your Google profile optimization session in real time together. Send you back reports. So you have an action plan. It's very valuable. Okay. So again, go to 3miledomination.com and book your audit right now. This is Jim Ross from the Self-Storage Show. Got another episode coming at you. Today I got David Allan. It's the newly minted, it's a new title now, right? President of Self-Storage. That's awesome, man.
Thank you. Yeah. Very excited.
Let's see, before we jump into what we're going to talk about, if you don't mind, take a beat here and kind of give us a little Cliff Note version of who you are and what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So Allan Self-Storage is a Canadian self-storage operator. We're one of the largest in Canada. Family owned and operated. We have 48 sites now in 4 provinces, soon to be in 5 provinces in Canada, with just under 2.5 million square feet of storage. And so like I said, family owned and operated. I've been with the company for 10 years. Been responsible for all of our acquisition and development work, and then effective October 1st, I'll be taking over as president.
That's awesome. After 48 facilities, you're doing your job. You're doing something right.
That's 48 facilities, and then 49 coming on in a few weeks, and then 50 just after that. So to start the new year, we'll be about 50 or 52, somewhere in there.
Yeah, congrats. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the reason I reached out to you, right, while you're on here, I think it was a Facebook post or no, LinkedIn maybe.
LinkedIn.
No, LinkedIn. Okay, saw a post about you were at the SSA show, and every year you kind of come back and do like a recap to your company, because obviously that many places, not everyone can make it to the SSA show, so it's nice you do a little recap. So I reached out. I'm like, hey, mind kind of doing that with the show, because you got a lot of listeners that obviously can't make it to Vegas every year to do that, so have a little insight recap would be really helpful.
Yeah, so sort of what happened was so I go to shows. I mean, that's one of the things that I do, is that sort of like outreach, that corporate outreach thing, and especially because up in Canada, Canada has a very, very well established storage market, but we typically tend to be a little bit behind what the US is doing. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example, but like an example that came up this morning was one of the people in the office we were talking to. We were talking to a technology provider, and we're amazed with the level of cameras that the US have. I mean, they have very, very high-end cameras with like those monthly subscriptions, with like the automated monitoring. Yeah. And we see that kind of stuff, and like nobody has that up in Canada. Like nobody's doing that.
Okay. Huh.
And it's, and so it's just one of those things. It's like this peek behind the curtain, because I mean, if it's happening in the States, in 5 years, it will be happening in Canada too. Sure. So, we go down to these shows to see what's happening, right? To see what, not so much the cutting edge stuff, but, we get sort of the V2 and V3 type of thing up here where, people have tried it down in the States, early adopters, they make sure it's working. And then by the time it's working, then we can adopt it up here. And then we can be, because we're so, we try to be so in tune with what's happening in the States. I mean, we can be an early adopter up in Canada with all the benefit of the learnings that the early adopters out in the States do. So that's kind of one of the things that we do. So when I do these shows, I mean, typically I do the spring ISS and the fall SSA, and sometimes the spring SSA as well. And then every time I come back, I do this whole summary for like our stakeholders, right? So my dad and my uncles and sort of the other sort of VP level execs up here, and then also we do some third party management. So usually I send out sort of notes to some of our third party owners. Yes. And I was kind of thinking, I was just like, man, like if I mean, everyone really seems to enjoy these updates, right? Because I try to keep it concise, and I try to like, sort of keep it, fairly high level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought, you know what, might as well just, turn it into content and send it out to a bunch of people and, see what happens. And so, and the response and the uptake was great. So
No, that's great. No, it's valuable. That's the way I learn too. It's like you go to the shows and stuff, and especially like the presentations. It's like I just want the Cliff Note version. Just give me the highlights, and if I want more information, I'll delve into it. But I love that kind of educational style. Just give me the highlights. Best of the best.
and it's really the intangible stuff too, right? I mean, like the SSA and the ISS both do a great job of sending out, recorded versions of the actual seminars that they put on, right? So if you go to these shows, I mean, there's so much content and speaker at these shows that, I mean, I'm not summarizing the actual,
Yeah.
I'm not summarizing what people are saying in their segments, because I mean, they do a great job of that on their own. What I'm doing is like, what I see at the trade show and conferences, what people are talking about, I mean, when I sort of go for coffee and drinks with people, like what are sort of those like, leading edge things that everyone's noticing from the shows at the same time. Like we were talking, a bunch of us were talking, after, in one of the breaks,
Yeah.
about the at the trade show. Like we were thinking back like 8 years ago. It's like 8 years ago, the trade show was full of things. It was full of stuff, right? Like things that you could buy, lock stores. There was always the contractors there, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there was just the things that you bought, right? Like merchandise, right? And like there's like 2 merchandise booths now. Everything else is software, right?
Yep.
And like thinking back 4 years ago, there was no security contractors there. Like there was no video cameras. Now I mean, there's probably like half a dozen or 8
Yep.
people selling video cameras there. So it's amazing to kind of see how things change. And like, and that's really what we go to see. And that's what I came back and I tried to, share out. It's just like, look, like this stuff is coming down the pipe, right? I mean, like this is the stuff we got to be aware of. I mean, you can buy your locks from Chateau, or all for one supply, whatever, and then like that's all fine, but like that's now like established, commoditized for the most part. You might like the guys that are there, you might like one of the products more than the other, but essentially like a cylinder lock is a cylinder lock for the most part, right? I mean, Chateau would probably kill me for saying that, but like but the rest of the stuff is
They're not a sponsor. It's all good.
but yeah, but the rest of the stuff is like, man, it's complicated now with like license plate monitoring technologies, and like when you are recording license plate, I mean, how do you keep that stuff safe? And then like if you want to create a bad actor list, right? So when you have like 50 sites in a market, and you capture sort of one guy who's breaking into some units with a license plate, and then you see that same license plate coming in across town to one of your other facilities, like what responsibilities do you have in order to, I mean, either act on that or not? Because can you act on that is like a real question, right? And so like that's the type of stuff. I mean, understanding the kind of like the contextual aspects of some of the more complicated things, like that's what you really get from these storage shows, and that's what I really like about them. So
No, that's great. A lot of times, obviously, you're there for the trade shows and seeing what kind of the trends are and latest and greatest. That's great. But what I hear over and over again, a lot of people, they go to the shows just to have this. They don't meet others and have that conversation. They've obviously almost learned more from network than they do at the actual shows and listening to presentations and talking to vendors. They learn more just by talking to people that are there.
Yeah, and like so I before I joined up with a family company, I was in the insurance world. So I was in an area of insurance called catastrophic loss reduction, and it was big associations, right? It was like everyone there was a member of like 1 or 2 associations. So when I first joined up with the family business, we didn't really attend as a family, as a company. We didn't really attend these shows, but I really wanted to, because that was the world that I came from. And when I joined, the first year that I went, I obviously didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything about self-storage. And I joined up with the SSA's Young Leader Group, the YLG.
Oh, really?
And there was a group of us that, I mean, we all sort of like, just like found each other through this YLG. And now like, 10 years later, it's amazing that like we've all sort of come up through the industry, and there's guys like, Adam Nicholson from Liberty, and like Peter Spicknagel, and Holly Fiorello, and like all these people that are just like everywhere, right? Like around the show. And it's just really fun that we've all been friends now for 10 years, and we've seen sort of how, seen different like career paths like go, but we're all successful in our own way. So it's yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's cool. Yeah, it's all about the relationships. It really is. It's, I go to the shows and that's one thing, but to be perfectly honest, that's why I have this platform. It kind of gives me a reason to be able to have these kind of talks and build my own relationships. Otherwise, I maybe wouldn't have found. I would say go to the trade shows, they're like drive-by highs. It's like sometimes it's hard to have the the vendors like, oh, I'll see you at the show, and then it's like 2 seconds of a high. I'm like, all right, I'll catch you later. One of those kind of things. Anyway, just kind of curious as far as the being there this last show. Again, you kind of said you've seen it change over the years. I don't know if it was about just me, but I saw much more of like the technology of the get ready for AI, here it's coming and things like that.
Yeah, totally.
Same vibe.
This show was all AI. I mean AI to the point that it was like, bludgeoning you over the head with it, right? I mean, it's just like every show is AI this, AI that. More so than I've seen in other years. Like I know last year the big theme was that hub and spoke remote management, right? They're very much focused on like how to manage your sites remotely, how to reduce your staff cost, right? How to do this, how to do that. That's what they talked about in the LOC, like the large operators thing, and and then it was just like carried all the way through. This year was very much like AI in the LOC, and like there was like session after session after session after session that was all like AI. But I think like reading between the lines, like really one of the things that I took away was that like AI is not like what people were talking about was AI is not a thing, right? It's not like it's not like one, it's not binary, right? It's not like you either use AI or you don't use AI. What I thought was really interesting about how people were presenting this one was like, look, guys, like AI is a spectrum, just like everything else, right? And there's like, I think in one of the keynotes, the guy was the guy who was Canadian actually, which I liked. He was saying, when you think about AI, it's kind of like going down to the corner shop for coffee, right? I mean, you can either take an Uber or you can take a tank or you can take the space shuttle, right? They're like all three are technically modes of transportation, but in order to accomplish your goal, you have to choose like what the right mode is. And that's very much like AI, right? You can use AI just to like automate simple things, or you can have a $1 million AI solution that will take you to Mars, right? And it's just like there's very different things. So understanding that, so that's something that we definitely saw a lot of. And sorry to cut you off. And the other thing I think was that like in talking about AI, they were like the chatbots, for example. What they're talking about is like chatbots apparently are now a thing of the past, and
because they just got here.
I know that's the thing that like blew my mind is that like nobody wants a chatbot that just chats anymore. Like, and that's what they originally came like. Chatbots originally came on the scene to like answer questions.
Yeah.
But now it's like chatbots need to be actionable, right? You need to be able to perform actions, right? So instead of just asking what your hours of operations are and having those like basically a stock series of responses, that's a call and response. So somebody types in, when are you open? And then like that routes through to this like logic answer. Now it's people want to be able to do things, right? People, I mean, just this morning I was using a chat bot on, it was an e-commerce website, right? Because I signed up for an email and I got a 15% discount. And through the chat bot, they solved my problem because my discount code wasn't working and they reissued me a new discount code. So that's a type of automated actionable response that we need to be able to integrate. And so it's like, even though chatbots just got here, they're already obsolete. And that's the type of stuff that just like blows my mind. It's like it happens so fast.
happens so fast, you blink and you got to stay up on it. Which is why you go to these shows. It's kind of stay ahead of the trends. But that caught my eye. It was same kind of thing. I was like, the chatbots, they just got here, but okay, let's go with it. And the more I was talking about it, kind of playing that through my head of just the scenarios of call centers, frankly,
Yeah.
I'd be like, we're that close away from having AI call centers that are able to have these conversations like you and I are having right now, and you don't really know the difference if it's a robot or not. In fact, I tested one out like a week ago. Totally different industry, totally different thing, but just to kind of see that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no robotic tone. We had a conversation and helped me make my purchase. It was crazy. It was,
and you can hear the chatbot like clicking the keys on the keyboard. It's like those types of things that like
it's fun.
Playing a keyboard, but it's actually a chatbot, and that's just like a recorded sound. It's like, yeah, no, it's funny how that works. So yeah, so that was a big thing. That was a big thing that I noticed when I was down there. Cameras is another thing. I mean, like security is like it's a big problem everywhere, right? And it's like, up in Canada, like I know that we're very lucky and very fortunate that we just don't have the same type of crime.
You don't have break-ins in Canada.
No, yeah. I mean, people obviously replace. They just borrow it, right? They're planning on returning it later on.
Yep.
But no, like that's a real thing, right? And trying to understand. And so that's something that I'm seeing really. People trying to understand how to because there's no there's no easy answer for that, right? I mean, like with a lot of these things, I think that it's a fairly straightforward thing. It's just money, right? Like with so many problems in our industry, just like every industry, you can pay to fix it. It's just whether or not people are willing to, right? So like with call centers, for example, you can just pay for the service, right? Whether it's Call Potential or whether it's, XPS or some of those guys. I mean, if you can just buy it, and that will solve your call center problem. But with security, it's like, it's such a different beast where there's like, in some of these situations, there's no way that you can just, because, we're balancing both being like an approachable retail company and being a secure repository for goods.
Yeah.
So it's like nobody wants to store their couch in a vault, right? That's not like so you can't have like, you don't want to portray that. And also like you want to have the minimum amount of security because you want people like, and like I know like a bunch of times I've had this conversation and I'll ask you the same question.
Yeah.
When you walk into an office or when somebody walks into one of your offices, do you have that television screen showing all the TVs?
Yeah. Yep. I've heard both arguments, but I do. I do. Yep.
Is that what you want, or do you want to have that in the back room? Do you want to like have the security but make like don't tell people because you want them to assume that it's a safe place, or do you want to put the security right up to like?
Yeah, you don't want to have the perception of you're Fort Knox and they're going to a prison or something like that. It's like you have the right perception. So I know I wrestled with that same question in my mind when it's like pro or con. And I can go back and forth. I can argue both sides, frankly. So
yeah, totally. And so do we, right? And we struggle with that type of stuff internally. But like, yeah, so I have that conversation a lot with people when I go to these types of shows, right? Because we're looking for a way to solve this security problem. I know Rob Cheedy from OpenTech he's put together a security advisory council where a bunch of us are getting together. There's some guys from Extra Space and Storage Mart and us and some other, and we're all sort of we sit on these basically have these little round tables and we like throw ideas back and forth about how we can improve and increase security without without essentially like ostracizing the customers themselves, because it's like it's a balance between prioritizing the customers and making sure that people have access. I cannot imagine anything more infuriating than somebody not being able to access their stuff that they're paying to secure, right? It's like, I don't know, it's like going to a website, right? When your password's not working and you can't reset it, right? And so you're locked out of your bank account or something like that, right? For security reasons, because they're trying to keep it safe, but also it's a negative negatively impacts your customer experience. So like, how can we provide security without doing the same thing, right? I mean, obviously you can lock down your facility, put chain link, chain wire, barbed wire up the top of your fence, and then have guard dogs out from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. right? And that's like, but is that what customers really want? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I know you described that, and I picture some guy in a guard tower with the spotlight. It's like
Totally.
that's what I was thinking. So that's cool. You guys have those kind of conversations. You get the big players and just bouncing ideas off each other, because again, that's how we're all growing as an industry. We're having these kind of conversations and kind of going back to to the SSA. That's why you attend these shows. Having those ideas and talking it through, and honestly, you kind of see something you maybe not have opened your mind to beforehand. So
well, and the best part is that like when you go to these conferences, I mean, you sit around and you just sit in that like main lobby bar or whatever it is, and you just like chat with whoever it is next to you, and they don't have to be a big operator, right? I mean, like I was talking to these guys from Arkansas, and they were describing how they work their camera systems, right? And it's just like, and they have one facility, two facilities. I mean,
but it's those conversations. Honestly, I've had on that side of the table these guys that had like two or three sites, and they had a system like down pat. I was like, I've never seen that. I should get them on the show to talk about their systems. It wasn't just security; it was just kind of the overall customer flow, the way they had it structured. It was like, so you guys are geniuses, dude. This is amazing. We got to talk about this, because those little guys sometimes they can have a different perspective that is exactly what's needed.
Yeah.
They can definitely help your own operations. So it doesn't matter if you're big, middle, huge. We're all here to learn from each other. And that's kind of why.
Well, and just, I mean, the big guys do not necessarily do things better, and that's like something that I've really learned.
Yeah. No.
Especially when it comes to like remote management. Like, man, there are some guys who are just so dialed in to remote management, they just get it, right? And it's just like, I was talking to a couple of operators from Florida, and they were saying that like they were talking about what they did, right? About how they had like, I mean, essentially they had everything barcoded, right? So it's like whether it was the mulch or the weeds or everything else. And so they had this like checklist. They had these guys that were driving around, and they had to like essentially like everything was barcoded. So if something was broken, they would just like barcode it, and then somebody else would come over and fix it, right? And it was like incredibly efficient. And like, when you're a smaller operator, I mean, that's really the time that you can implement some of these things, because like thinking about barcoding like 2.5 million feet of storage is just like, oh my god. It's like, yeah, I mean, like that's a great option, but not for us, right? But if you sort of like inculcate that type of like culture right at the beginning, when you have like one facility, two facilities, it's like, and then by the time you scale, then all of a sudden you're super efficient, and you got low ops costs, and it's just like, yeah, it's awesome.
I took over management of a location about like 4 or 5 years ago, and they had those barcodes like everywhere. And I was like, what is going on? And I realized what they were doing. And I saw that system. So again, it was a small little player, small site, and like they had it going. All right, they're onto something. So again, love that. We're all here to learn from each other. Again, that's why I do the show. Hopefully people are listening to this, could spark an idea or two. But again, going back to the SSA in particular, it's great to be able to take the time to go to those kind of shows. But if you can't make it in person, like I said, they do have the stuff you can get them online afterward. I know they sell the presentations and everything on their website. So it's a valuable resource.
Yeah.
I want to be mindful of your time. So let's wrap this up. But if people want to reach out to you, if you don't mind, if you get any question like that, how do they get in contact with you?
So my email is dallan@applestorage.com. So it's DALLAN at applestorage.com. And where you can reach out I'm on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to, I love engaging. I love engaging with these types of conversations, and I love, bouncing ideas off, and, I don't know, it's I really enjoy being a part of, associations and reaching out to guys and just being hooked into the industry. It's great because so many people share, and especially with us being up in Canada, we're happy to share what we do, and I find that a lot of guys, especially down in the States, are happy to share with us because like we're not competitive.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It goes both ways. It totally does. So the fact that you like to talk storage, we'll have to have you come back on, and we'll nerd out again and talk storage. So
for sure,
you don't mind.
Anytime.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye. Before we wrap up, just a quick reminder. Do you want to level up your storage game? Visit theselfstorageshow.com. Grab some high-value freebies, check out top vendor spotlights, and stay in the loop with our newsletter. Do you want to chat about becoming a client with 3 Mile Storage Management? All the info's there. Plus, if you've got a story to share, we're listening. Everything you need is at theselfstorageshow.com.